Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Thanks so much for checking out this video, and if you're new here, hello. My name is Rebecca, or you may know me as Venomous from Instagram. Either way, I'm so glad that you're checking out this video, and I hope you stick around for future ones as well. So today's video is going to be all about plants. I was never super into plants, and I always struggled to keep them alive, honestly. But as I went through school as a biologist, I learned to love plants and care for them as well. So it's definitely become a much more important part of my life, especially now that I keep reptiles. So today's video is going to be me showing you some of the species in Florida that you're able to feed your herbivorous tortoises. Now, I've been doing a lot of exploration, looking at all the plants we have here. There's a lot of overgrown plants. There's a lot of work that we need to do here, but it's really exciting, and we feel really thankful and grateful and blessed. But I started to wonder, well, maybe some of these plants are okay for tortoises, that we could be feeding them, we could replant them, we could try to grow more of them, and so on. So I started to do some research, and I found some really helpful resources. Now remember, when it comes to reptile care, it's always good to do the most research possible. Don't just go by one video or one book or one article. The more the merrier, and you really can never have too much information when it comes to caring for these exotic species. Now, I have a lot of native plants on the property, but there's also quite a bit of invasive plant species as well, so I'm going to mention some of that. Now, always remember, tortoise diets are species specific. What works for one may not work for another, or could even be harmful to another, so always please do the species specific research on your tortoise if you have a variety of tortoise species. And this really goes for all animals and all reptiles as well. So what I ended up doing was exploring through my property with my handy dandy plant gloves that I got, and using an app to identify some plant species. And then I did some further research online, and I mostly am using the resource from FWC. Also, a huge shout out to Emily May Maple from the Palm Beach Zoo, who further helped me identify and get some more information on some of the species of plants that I have here. So what I ended up doing was exploring through my yard, using this app to identify, and then using the FWC resource to identify the plants if they would be a good fit for the diets of my tortoises. So the FWC research that I am using and cross-referencing all these plant species with is for the gopher tortoise diets, actually. So gopher tortoises are really cool, really special tortoise species that is native to Florida. And some of the native plants that we have here are great for them. The gopher tortoise is mainly an herbivorous species, which just means they really prefer the plants, the greens, and stuff like that. And I found this to be helpful for me because a lot of my reptile species are herbivorous as well. So I'm going to experiment with some of these plants. Always remember, when you're feeding plants to any reptiles, that insecticides, pesticides, and fertilizers are a big no-no. They're very dangerous for tortoises, so you don't want to feed them anything, no matter how good it is for them, if it has insecticides, fertilizers, and so on. If you buy something from Home Depot or something like that, there are some methods that you can eventually rinse it of those toxins. So I hope that you find this video helpful. I hope you enjoy it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and keep updated with me on Instagram. I hope you guys enjoy this video and find it helpful.
The first native plant species we're looking at is Chrysobalanus ikeko, or the cocoa plum, which is a shrub that can grow extremely large, and it has attractive greenery. It has these soft, delicate green leaves that other wildlife species like to feed on, such as deer. You can see something already got to it. So this should be okay for the tortoises mixed in or once in a while. It's listed as moderate nutritional value for gopher tortoises, so again, it's probably not the only thing you should be feeding, but mixed in should be just fine. This cocoa plum seems to have some lichens on it, which are these colorations. The cocoa plum, as its name suggests, has some beautiful berries that are very low in sugar. So this is great because many tortoise species cannot tolerate high sugar in fruit. This is a seasonal fruit, so you won't always have those berries. When the berries become ripe, they start to have this lighter color. They're pretty soft-bodied, and they have a seed in the center. I'm gonna pick some of these for my tortoises and see how they like them. This shrub has been growing wildly for quite some time, so I'm not worried about any pesticides or fertilizers. As the fruit ripens, it does become darker and the sugar content does rise. Like this. Coco plum can grow very large, so it may require maintenance in your yard, and although those berries are seasonal, it is safe for tortoises and even human consumption. This is the Brazilian pepper, and it's a big no-no and also an invasive species in Florida that's a huge problem. But even more so, this is actually a toxic plant for both animals and humans. So stay away from it and keep an eye out so you know how to identify it. The next plant that I found abundant here was some type of Asparagus Fern. Now be careful because this does have some pretty nasty spikes. It is also listed on many forums as toxic for dogs, cats, and reptiles. So I'm gonna make sure to keep this away from any of my animals, especially when it comes to what they're eating. Since it seems to grow in a vine-like form in between all of this coco plum and other random plant species, I have to be really careful not to let it get mixed in with anything that I'm feeding off. If you have a better identification, please leave it in the comments below. Now, since it's right here, I would like to mention the Rosary pea, Abrus precatorius, which is actually an invasive species to Florida. It's native to Asia and Australia, and it grows in a vine climbing-like way. It also has these bright red berries that are inside pods, and this is the most dangerous part of the plant because a single berry chewed well could actually kill adults, children, and a variety of animals. So this is definitely a plant you want to identify because it grows pretty well in Florida and can be found commonly. And again, please don't feed this to your tortoises. The next plant that I found was a species of Vitis or Muscadine grapes. So it's listed on the Go for Tortoise website for FWC that Vitis grapes are a very high forage value for gopher tortoises, and there is a variety of species of Muscadine grapes, so I'd encourage you to identify the ones that you have. I'm not entirely sure the specific species that I have right now, but it definitely seems to be a Muscadine grape. I would just be aware of feeding too many of the actual grapes to tortoises because that's pretty high in sugar, so again, just look into that. I thought that maybe these were the grapes, but it turned out to be attached to a different palm tree actually, so these are not the grapes of the Muscadine. The leaves of this vine seem to be very soft and flexible and probably quite yummy, so I'm going to be picking some of these leaves and seeing how my tortoises like it. So it seems like this could be the grape part of this Vitis species, which again is a form of wild grape that you can find natively here in South Florida. So I'll be keeping an eye on this, and once it's ripe enough, I will be feeding it off to my tortoises, but for now we're gonna see how they like the leaves.
So I'm just gonna be pulling this out. These have just been growing wild for God knows how long, but the people that lived here before us didn't really do much yard maintenance, and he said he didn't even spray for like ants or pests, so he definitely wasn't using any fertilizer, which is why it's safe what I'm doing. You always wanna consider pesticides, insecticides, fertilizers, which are very, very toxic and you don't want your tortoise eating. So my recommendation for if you buy, let's say, a hibiscus plant from Home Depot that has definitely been treated with insecticides and fertilizers, what you're gonna wanna do is take it out of the pot that it came in, rinse the roots off, so get rid of all the dirt that it was in, replant it in the ground somewhere you don't have any of those toxic chemicals, and let it sit for a couple months for it to rinse through. I think that's the safest way, but it's not even 100% guaranteed because when it comes to animals, crazy things happen, okay? Really crazy things can happen, and you just have to think with that type of mentality.
So I'm placing a pile of grapevine leaves and then some cocoa plum berries and seeing which ones they like. Many different species of wildlife enjoy grapevines, like whatever the heck this thing is. Just kidding. It's actually a robber fly, and it's a predatory species of fly that feeds on other insects. But anyways, enjoy that. Next is the yummy loquat tree, Areopatria japonica. And this is actually a non-native species to Florida, but it can be found frequently, and it's listed as a moderate nutritional value for gopher tortoises. It has pretty soft leaves that are a bit grainy, and we actually have these saplings from a tree that's in our yard. Now this tree was actually in our tortoise habitat, so the fruit would fall. Loquats are a citrus fruit, and we typically really want to stay away from citrus fruits when it comes to feeding our tortoises, but it seems that the low sugar in the loquats seem to be very tolerated by all of our tortoises. They seem to naturally stay away from the leaves, which might indicate some toxins. Tortoises are really good at not eating the things that are bad for them, but sometimes it can happen, so just be careful on citrus and high sugar fruits. Now, I didn't have any potting soil, which is why I had to literally dig a hole and use the dirt from the ground to replant these saplings. So I definitely will be upgrading these, I promise. We have very sandy soil here, so I'm hoping it'll be okay for now. So this next plant is a beautiful wildflower. As you can see, it's yellow, and this is called Wedelia trilobata. This is listed as moderate forage value for gopher tortoises, but it is a non-native species. It has these dark green, rigid, and almost hard leaves, and it seems to grow really, really well. It's growing all along the side of my yard, and it does have its concerns of becoming an invasive species. In my personal experience with tortoises, for some reasons, they seem to really avoid eating yellow flowers. I don't see it very often, but I will be taking a couple samples just to see if they will eat it at all. Now this next flower I didn't find in my yard. I actually got it from a nursery, but it's your common hibiscus flowers. Now there are some native species in Florida, so I am mentioning it because it is listed as a moderate to high forage value for tortoises. It's actually one of their most favorite treats ever. Now if you get this from a commercial place, you're gonna have to let it sit for a while, take it out of the soil it was in, rinse off those roots, plant it in your yard somewhere free of chemicals, and then let it rinse and do its thing naturally for a few months before you decide to feed it off. The tortoises will really love the flowers that will bloom. They can be a variety of colors, and they have some great nutrition. So this is a great go-to and staple that you could add into their diets. Tortoises really seem to love hibiscus. They have soft leaves and delicious flowers. Now lastly for this video, this is another one I got from a nursery, so it's not anything I can use for a while, but this is an Opuntia cactus, or the prickly pear. This is a great plant to have for your tortoises. It's very high in the vitamins they need, and it can be found all over Florida. Just make sure you have the Opuntia species with no spikes, and you rid it of any toxic chemicals if you got it commercially. This cacti grows very well in Florida, and it's so cute when you see how much the tortoises absolutely love it. Now I will be experimenting with grapevine and cocoa plum feeding my tortoises today. Maybe another time I will do some others, but for now I just want to do a little bit at a time to be safe. So let's see if they like it. What do you think? Are they gonna like the cocoa plum or the grapevine more? Maybe they will love both, or maybe not at all. I've never tried to feed my tortoises this ever before. It seems like he checked it out, maybe sniffed it. Tortoises have great senses of smell, but he said nah. So I fed a little bit later in the day and they had already eaten other things, so I thought maybe that's why, and I tried to offer it to someone else. It was starting to seem like nobody wanted any of the cocoa plum. From my hands, at least. That's okay, I guess. This is actually the first time I've ever tried to feed my tortoises cocoa plums, so here you are, witnessing that moment. After this tortoise decided he did like it, he kept going on these cocoa plums. Now you can see that he's eating and hitting that seed and kind of tasting it and feeling it out. Tortoises are very intuitive and they have some good senses that help them out. When you have an herbivorous animal like this one, they have a very wide digestive tract that is usually pretty adapted to eating seeds. When feeding brand new and especially wild items, you want to do it in small pieces just to see if there's any bad reactions or anything that could be concerning. It's better that they have just a little bit of it than if you gave them a huge pile of something that could potentially be toxic. It's much more likely that if they have just a little bit of toxins, they will be able to deal with it, but if they had a whole pile of it, that may not be the case. You also always want to be aware of choking hazards when it comes to your tortoise and what they're eating and what is in their habitats. When it comes to feeding your tortoise anything new, just use your discretion and judgment and be careful. Maybe because I offered this later in the day after everybody already ate that they kind of just passed up the grapevine and didn't really care. I hope that in the future I can expand on my knowledge with plants and tortoises and also the native species that I have right here in my backyard. I hope that you found this video helpful, and if you have any suggestions, comments, or identifications of any of the plants you see, please feel free to comment below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and stay updated with me on Instagram. Thank you.